money. Obviously, you have to have some money. But I didn't need, like $10,000-$20,000 saved to be like, okay, I'm ready to move in case it doesn't work out or whatever. I have money. So I don't know. I think you need to know, like, if that's going to drive you crazy. I know some people who literally would not be able to function that way. But I think you just have to, like, trust yourself and, like, kind of make a plan. And always, in terms of having plans and, like, whether it be budgets or whatever, like, I think plans are good, but you also have to be fully prepared for your plan to get derailed, whether it be, like, oh, you suddenly got sick and, like, we're paying a bunch of medical bills for whatever, or, like, something crazy is always going to happen, especially in New York. So you just have to always be willing and, like, ready to, like, go with the flow and move with it. But yeah, I think for the most part, another thing I wanted to mention about that is, like, using your network. I don't know how you guys are, like, how your school is, in terms of, like, alumni relations and stuff like that. But I know, like, at least at Ithaca, like, we have very strong, like, we have, like, Facebook groups that it's like everyone who's ever gone there is a part of still and stuff. And people will post and be like, hey, like, there's always a time period when the kids who were about to graduate or just graduated are all like, hey, like, I'm about to be moving to the city. Anybody know of a sublet? Anybody know of, because especially in this industry, it's like people who live here are always living here and not living here. So within the business here, there's so much of, like, oh, hey, I need a sublet. I need a subletter, like, Facebook, Instagram. Obviously, you want to be safe and, like, not, I think it's best to go through, either friend of a friend or something, but, like, using those resources in terms of, like, finding housing and that kind of stuff. And then also with like, job things in terms of, like, survival jobs or whatever you want to call it. I think thinking outside of the box is helpful. There's certain things, I mean, New York is such a saturated place, and, like, like, restaurant jobs are not the easiest to come by, or also, like, maybe that's not your skill, because I could not be anyone's server, I don't think. I just, like, wouldn't really be good at it. I was a bartender for a year, but, like, technically in New Jersey, and, like, it was, like, a cute little, like, gig at a restaurant. It wasn't anything crazy, but I think you just, like, kind of need to know your skills. Like, if you're not actually going to be a good server or, like, person in the hospitality industry, like, don't be out here trying to get a job at a restaurant, especially in New York, like, where they want you to already have 20 years of experience and, like, whatever. So, think outside the box, try to find those nanny hookups. It's honestly the best, like, survival gig, I think, just because it's under the table, it's flexible, usually, like, and then also think of, like, other things, skills that you have that other people might not have so abundantly in the city, like, whether if you're a great musician and you can, like, get in as, like, start off, like, as an audition, like, accompanist or whatever, like, it's like every actor's always looking for an accompanist, like, that kind of thing. Or if you happen to be, like, great at, like, transcribing music or, like, that kind of stuff, like, those, like, little skill, not little, but, like, those skills that they're a little more refined and specialized, and less people have them, and you can get paid a lot of money to, be offering a service that not everyone can. Those are my New York tips.
Great.
Yeah, I think I have the next question. It was about cruises. So is, like,
Yeah.
are any of the cruise interested people here? I don't know. You can, like,
I think we have a few.
Okay. Well, great. I was like, I don't want to talk about cruise. Oh wait, we got more people. Hi.
People are coming.
What up? Yeah, cool. I was like, I don't want to talk about cruises. Danny, hey. If no one who's interested is here. But so my cruise experience was very different, I think, than a lot of people's. So, like, the cruise industry as a whole, like, has it's just like there's a wide range of like what you can get into, right? Even just as like whether if you're a singer or dancer, but there's also a lot of other jobs on cruise lines. So like if anyone else is like, you know, if there's any interest in like HR or like other like like because they're running production. So if you're into like technical theater and like all that stuff, like they have every job. It's a whole world on a ship. So remember that. But in terms of performing, I was on ships that were new build ships. So they were literally just being built. Like I was on 2 out of my 3 ships. I was literally on them when they were in the yard in Germany being built. And so it's like, that's a little bit of a different experience. For the most part, it's a very great experience. But it's slightly different than like if you book a ship that's just like an older ship. Like cruise lines, for the most part, it's like they are, as they're putting out so much new products and stuff and like building new ships, that's like what their focus ends up on. And they, you know, the other ships are running, but they kind of forget about them. So like they might be a little older, or like things might run a little differently from one ship to another. Like rules can be very different. They're very much like, you know, on that ship, like whoever is the authority figures, like the captain, the staff captain, all those people, they run their ship how they want to. So you just have to remember each experience can be very different from one to another. But for the most part, as performers especially, you end up with a good amount of time. Like there's a lot of factors, just because, you know, depending where you are, your ship's going, your itinerary might also be changing. You know, if you do I think there's like 3 and 4 day cruises or something sometimes in the Caribbean. Those are like, you're going to end up doing a lot of shows because the turnaround is so quick. But whereas like my first ship was like 14-day cruises primarily. So we like barely worked and like we're just hanging out. So it's like, if you are interested in ships, it's like, sure, do the auditions when they're more general, but also like if you know, like you really want to do, you know, a book musical, like they usually have specific auditions for like the book musicals, or for like newer ships and stuff. So just like you have to really research, and like kind of, it's nice if you can go into it being like, you know I would really like to be in the Caribbean, and I know this ship like goes there, or like I really want to be in the Mediterranean, like I'm really interested in exploring that region of the world, and I know this ship will be there. Like look at those itineraries, look them up, and like try and figure it out. And also just know, like, cruise life, I mean, it's so fun. It's such a fun thing to do, especially when you're younger and just like feeling a little more free and stuff. Like it's so fun. I think no matter what kind of ship or whatever you end up on, I think it's a fun experience, and everyone there is like there to, you know, make money, but like to have a good time, and like ships are good times. So yeah, I don't know if anyone has anything more specific that they want to know, feel free to ask. But I feel like that's like the best way to fully encompass cruise ships in 3 minutes.
Do we have other cruise ship questions people want to? Yeah.
When you work on a cruise ship, I don't know the structure of like the shows. Do you usually do like one set book musical, or is there like a repertoire of things you do on different nights? Like how often do you work?
So it really just depends on the ship. So like my first ship, being like the new big ship that it was, like it was so big that we actually had 2 theaters in our ship. And so like on the one theater, they did We Will Rock You, the musical. And then they also had an entire other show, as well as like a couple, I think they were involved in like a game show, and another, like the singers had like a concert thing that they would do every so often. And so it just all kind of fluctuates. It depends like how long your cruises are. But then like, whereas on my side, we were in this cool, weird, like crazy venue where like we didn't have a backstage. It was like the whole back of the of like behind us, like the whole back of the ship was just glass windows, and they would like bring in this Vistarama thing, and like we did our show in there, but it was because it was so small, we would perform only that one show, really. Whereas like the other cast, like they had 4 different, you know, shows or concert, various like things that they had to know, and we only had one. And I think eventually there was like an opening first day of the cruise thing that we eventually added, but like, yeah, in terms of like material learned and stuff, it was like 2 shows, that's it. So it just depends. Yeah, and some ships it's like you have to do like a welcome aboard kind of thing and a farewell kind of thing. So yeah, that is just like so dependent on just the contract, like the particular ship you're on and how long the cruises are and stuff. So it just depends.
I had a question too. Speaking of contracts, this probably also varies, but I'm just wondering about how long the average contract is for a cruise ship.
Yeah, it does vary. I feel like it used to be a little more standard, like 6 months or so, like 6 to 8 months, but it does vary. So like for my first 2 being that they were new builds, it was like our rehearsal process was longer because we created new shows and stuff. So it was just like, oh, you know, we need extra time in case things don't work out and we need to like suddenly change everything. So I think that one, and those both ended up being, I think the first one was like 7.5 months in total, and the second one was 8.5, I want to say, or maybe like 8.5 and 9.5, including rehearsal, something like that. But normally, I mean, they really do depend, because then my third contract, my last contract I did I was on the ship for 4.5 months. But for the most part, they're usually, I'd say 6 to 9 is like what I am hearing mostly, and even now more so from a lot of my friends who still do it. I'd say like, yeah, like a solid like 7.5 to 9 months is like pretty standard now. Anything else?
Yeah. Sorry if you already mentioned this. I was sort of distracted at the beginning, but like, what is the schedule like? Like, I guess, are you always on the ship, or are there gaps where you're back at home and going back and forth?
So for the most part, it's like usually you go to rehearse like wherever, depending on most of them I feel like rehearse in Miami. A couple, I think, you know, like Disney does Toronto, and like someone does Tampa, I forget. But so you go and you rehearse usually for like anywhere from 3 to 6 weeks. And usually from there, it's like you go straight to the ship and you're there until, you know, the end of your contract. On occasion, a ship will do something called a dry dock, which will mean that the ship is staying in one spot with no passengers because they're either like fixing something or doing some sort of renovation or updating the ship in some way. And then during dry docks, sometimes, depending on how long they are, I know like sometimes people will go home, but that's usually more of like an obscure thing as opposed to the norm. But yeah, for the most part, it's like when you're gone, you're gone. Like it's like 6 months or 9 months. See you then. But yeah.
So when you said that, like, it might be cool to try to look for cruises that go to areas that you are interested in exploring, do you get free time to be able to explore?
Yeah, like your day-to-day schedule is like, so like whenever, because if you think, I don't know if like any of you have ever been on a cruise as a passenger. I hadn't before I worked on them, but like, so it's like a cruise essentially. It's like people go, let's say, you know, a week. People go on a cruise for a week. Let's say they get on the ship in New York. Let's say your home port is New York. So you're sailing from New York to the Bahamas or whatever, to the Caribbean. And so it's like you get on and it takes 2 days to get there. So you have 2 sea days first. where, you know, you're just at sea, so you're just on the ship. You probably have to do more shows because they have to keep onboard entertainment on those days more prevalent. And then you're going to get to like Florida or something for that third day. And then so you'll be able to get off the ship, will be docked there from like 8 to 8, maybe, you know, 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. So the crew, like usually, especially performers, because like you're not like working, you know, people who are working in like the restaurants or something, it's like they probably, you know, have to get up that day and serve breakfast. But like you are just free. So you just go ahead and go about your day and make your plans and live your life. You get off or you stay on. And then, you know, maybe the next day you'll be in Nassau, and then the next day you'll be in some other Caribbean spot, and then you'll sail 2 more days back up to New York. So like that's kind of, you know, that's kind of how it goes in a generalized sense. So on port days, you have full freedom unless like there's drills, like safety drills, because you have to remember, like being on a ship in a sense is like being in the army. Like they have to follow a lot of maritime laws and all these things. So performers usually have it the easiest in regard to being like, you know, you don't have extra duties, but everyone on the ship as a crew member does have safety duties to an extent, because something could happen. You could hit an iceberg. And we must be prepared, as we've learned from the past, that we should be prepared for such instances. So yeah, so there's like little things like that where it's like, oh, we have drill this morning, so maybe instead of fully being able to get off at like 8 or 9 or whatever when I wanted to, I'm not going to be able to get off until 11. Yeah. I see a hand.
Yeah, Kimmy.
Hi, this is kind of off the cruise topic, but I wanted to ask your personal experience about being a person of color in musical theater, particularly being like a singer first. Our program emphasizes a lot of importance of like being a dancer first, but I just wanted to hear about that.
Nice. Being a dancer first, what's that like? Whoa. How fun. How fun. Yeah, being a person of color in the industry, I mean, right now it's like, oh, cool. Like, you know, finally a lot of opportunities have arisen for people of color, and there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot more efforts to promote diversity in especially mainstream theater and like Broadway and all that stuff, and people are creating a lot of new work for people of color, which is really exciting, and especially work that's not just like, oh, you get to be the maid or the slave or the servant. Like, so yeah, so like I think it's a very exciting time for that. And I mean, I hate to even think of it as like, ooh, it's a great time. Like right now, it's like, it's just kind of how it should be. It just should be more of a level playing field. It should be, our story should be able to be told just as much as anyone else's. So yeah, I think it's been an interesting progression for me personally, because I'm from like an all white suburb, or predominantly white suburb, where like yeah, it was like in high school and stuff, like doing shows was just like, oh, like, you know, like obviously I will be just in the back. Like I will obviously only be in the ensemble, because like how could I dare think that I could be anything but that? But yeah, so it's like, it's different. And especially, I mean, doing like a show like Jagged Little Pill, where it's like, you know, like the lead character is a Black girl, like weird. But yeah, it's exciting.
Yay.
Yeah.
I have a question. I don't have a video camera right now, but so going back to cruise lines a bit, since you've kind of had experience in that, would you recommend that it's probably a good at least for a somewhat more sturdy job option to go into right after college, or like how's the environment for that? Would you recommend?
Yeah, I think like honestly, the money that I made doing ships was like, I feel like I feel like the time when I was doing ships, it was like still so much, especially amongst, I don't know, amongst people who had gone to like, you know, like who had gone to musical theater programs, like at like, you know, like good schools around the country. It was like cruise ship was not the word. like mum on that. Do not tell like your professors that you're about to go do a cruise ship. That's how it felt to me. But like I don't know. I honestly was just like, I want to get away. And oh shoot, like this ship thing they're talking about, and I'm gonna get to travel, and wait, I'm gonna make how much? Oh cool. Yeah, that's great. Like if you think like you're too good for a ship and would prefer to be like waiting tables, that's great for you. I love that for you. But for me, it was not it. So I think like it's a perfect time to go and do that. I think when my student loans started kicking in 6 months after graduating, it was like, well, this is nice that I actually have this money to pay. I'm actually getting paid every week and like not chump change. So yeah, and you also, the thing about ships is like there's so much, to me, I didn't say this, I often compare ships to college, where it's like it really is a lot of like what you make of it, and you know, whether there's going to be so many factors that can determine how your experience is going to go on them, but it's so much of what you make of it. It's like you get to really like, it's such a great opportunity, whether that is just like making new friends and like new connections and having a good time, but also making some money, or like whether that's like saving like an insane amount where, you know, you're just like, okay, I did this 6 to 9 months, I had this period of my life, and now I have some money. Like now I can move to New York and not have to like be scared if I don't get a job. Sorry, my dog is a little annoying sometimes. But not be like scared if I don't find a job or whatever in the first couple of months that I'm there. Like I don't have to eat ramen noodles. Like that's nice. So I think it's great. Like financially, it's really good. Oh my God, Dexter, please stop. I think it's great for like the financial benefits, and like you just really, I mean, I've seen people who finish a contract. I'll be honest, my first contract being in the Mediterranean, especially, oh my God, this is so ridiculous. Being in the Mediterranean, especially on my first contract, I'll be honest, I did not save much money. I was living my best life in Italy and Spain and Portugal and France, but beyond that, I was like, all right, okay, we're gonna go back, and now we gotta hunker down a little bit. We want to come back from this with feeling like that time was well spent. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. Could I also, if it's appropriate to ask, about how much do you make in a cruise ship, would you estimate?
As singers, I mean, it is different. So like I said, cruise ships, it's like military, but it's also like just like there's a lot of weird hierarchy things with that, a lot of which I don't agree with. It's like, oh, some people are not treated the best. There's a lot of rules and regulations. And for some people, it's more intense depending on their positioning. But like I said, for performers, it's usually pretty good. You're a little higher up in the hierarchy. But financially, pick him up. Financially, it's like, I mean, mind you, also like it's been a few years, and I think for the most part, people are making probably, I don't know, more now, but you definitely, I think the starting for a singer is somewhere, I feel like the lowest end you would find is like 4,500 a month. So like a little over 1,000 a week. A dancer might be like, I'd say probably now a dancer is probably around like $1,000 a week, maybe 900 or so. But I don't know. I mean, it's like kind of hard for me to say because I'm like, I know how cruise lines also are. They're like they can be a little weird and shady, and like, they can be like a little suspect with like, I know like they've gone through a lot recently. Some lines I know have tried to like push some people who've been with the companies for longer out because, you know, as people were getting more money each contract, that's adding up. Whereas like they can find someone who's like fresh out of school or something like younger. I mean, because mind you, cruise ships, like you're allowed to work on them once you're 18. So like I've done contracts with literal 18-year-olds. And especially in people from like other countries, it's like the US dollar goes a lot further sometimes than, you know, the currency in their country. So it's like, if I pay, you know, someone from another country might be so excited about $3,000 a month because that might be like bank where they're from. But whereas like it wouldn't exactly be the same for someone from the US. So, but yeah, it's definitely like, I'd say an average of at least 1,000 a week, particularly for singers.
Question. We were just talking about like is our cruises like a good job right out of school? And I just graduated last year, so I'm actually I live in Chicago now, but I'm just in this weird place of like, okay, I'm going to every single audition I can, and obviously it's different than New York, but I feel like all my New York friends are going to every single audition they can, and it's like, it's pretty exhausting. So I think my first question is, it's two parts. The first question is, how long was it out of school until you were like starting to more consistently book work? And the second part would be, what were you like doing in that time while you're like auditioning and maybe have like a gig, you know, once a year or something like that to remain creative and hone your skill?
Okay, first question was how long?
Yeah, like how long until you were like consistently booking work?
Okay, I would say, I mean, it's kind of hard to say. So when I first moved to the city, I didn't go on a single audition or anything for a while, no, not a year, 9 months, I think. And it took like some really like tragic events happening in my life for me to be like, oh shoot, like if I'm not here doing what I said I was coming here to do, I gotta go because I got other stuff going on elsewhere that I should be tending to better than I am, or I need to go and get my ass at an audition. So I went to a couple auditions, and I will say like, something that I feel like that has always worked for me in particular is I've never been one to be like, okay, I'm just going to go. Like, I'm just going to go to all the auditions to go. I, even from like that first point when I was like, okay, like I have to go to an audition or like, why am I here? I remember sitting down and pulling up playbill.com and sifting through every audition that was going to be happening that next week and saying these two, or I think it might have been three. I was like, these three are like, sound like something that like, I feel like I can nail. Like, I feel like are things that I'm interested in and that I have like particular skills that will shine in that room from what I'm reading. So I feel like I've really tried, I don't know if it's because I'm lazy, but to an extent, when it comes to like, I don't know, auditioning, maybe it's because I get a lot of not performance anxiety now, but auditioning, especially early on for me, was never something, golly. Like school, like literally I've had friends come see me in Jagged Little Pill on Broadway playing Frankie Healy and being like, how did you do that? They're like, wow, when did this happen? And I'm like, okay, guys, thank you. That's rude. But I'm like, but I just think there was never anything to see me in school. One, because, you know, diversity, like where, but like two, just like I was a horrible auditioner, even like things that I could have done. And also like then performance anxiety. So I think being specific is like beneficial, but also with that, it's like you do have to remember, especially now, which is something I've learned more recently, is not counting yourself out. So like, don't kill yourself going to every audition that happens in a week, but like, you know, maybe rank, maybe like be like, okay, if these 20 auditions are happening, well, let's cross 10 of them off first because of various reasons probably. But then like of these 10, like let's rank, like what are the top 5 that are like, that role is for me, that like this like is for me, I have the perfect song to sing for what they're asking for, like that kind of stuff. Because I will say, the second I started going to things, it was very quick. But like, I don't know if it's just because I was very specific and like, you know, hadn't done the whole run the gamut that a lot of my other friends had done. And it was just like, I was just walking into like, you know, a couple of things that were perfect for me. And I ended up getting a couple of them. And then from there it was like, that's what it was. And then I did chips for 3 years. So I hadn't gone to an audition for 3 years. But yeah. So that was question number 1. What was question number 2 again?
And you know, I guess what would you recommend for like the young people who are just out of college who are like trying to like to work and audition? Like, are you a supporter of like making your own work? Do you feel like classes after college are really important? Surrounding yourself with like-minded creatives? How would you say to like keep the ball rolling instead of just like waiting for people to give you jobs?
Yes. I think a lot of it is like partially finding, especially when you're early on, like finding things that that other people might be saying no to, not in the sense of like, oh, this is going to be a trash job, so like no one else wants it, I'll take it. Not that, but like even for me, it was cruise ships. I will tell you, I literally, before I did ships, I didn't know any other person who had gone to school for musical theater that had done a cruise ship. Now I know about 35, honestly, like in the classes coming after me from my school, from like some other schools. And like, it was one of those things, like I said, like people were not saying like, that's it, that's what you should do. Like, no, that was, if anything, they were like, cruise ships, like, why would you do that? And I was like, well, honey, I pay my bills, you can't, sorry. And also I will say, in terms of like creativity and like exercising your craft, cruise ships are also a great place for that, because you're there, it's like there's musicians there, like there's all the things, there's people who like know how to, there's nice video cameras, you just got to ask the right person to use it. Like there's stage, there's lights, you can like create a whole show. I mean, I have plenty of friends who have created their whole like own like like one person show or whatever, or like redone reels, because like you can get great footage either from the show you're performing, but also like just being like, oh, hey, production manager, is it okay if I use the theater on this port day, like when everyone's off the ship for a few hours? And like, hey, my friend who happens to be like, you know, the piano player in the band or whatever, like you can do those things. And I think doing things like that is very important, whether it be just for your own personal like creativity, or for like, you know, garnering material, like I'm the worst at being like, oh, like if someone's like, oh, send me like a video, someone's like, I need you to like just send me over a video of like singing something you love, I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, I don't have anything on a video, I hate every video of me ever. So yeah, that's important. I think you can also totally do that off of ships in like with your friends. I've had friends at one point, literally me and my, like, we have a big little program or whatever we used to, I don't know what they're doing now, but like me and my little at one point in the city started like a little scene study class that we were doing with some people who, I mean, we're what, 3 classes apart or whatever technically, and like it was like some of her friends, some of my friends, some in between, and like we were doing like a little, renting a studio and doing a little scene study moment. I think there are a lot of great classes to take, but I also think, like, especially for people who've just finished school, like, you've just been doing class so much. Like, you might be okay in a class for a little bit, unless it's like something specific, you know, unless like if your program has no sort of commercial training or whatever, or, you know, acting on camera training, and that's something that you're like, that's actually what I want to do. Then like, yeah, take that class for that. But like, do you just need to be in like a general other like scene study acting class or whatever, like at this point of like just having finished getting so much information and paying for it? Maybe not yet, maybe, but like I think there are very good valuable classes to take, but I don't think that you have to be like, okay, I need to be taking class. I need to have a survival job. I need to be at every audition. I need to be creating a cabaret. I need to, like, you gotta, like, college is like a lot. It's an overload of like a lot. And then like transitioning into like life after that is also a lot. It's still a lot. And like, so you just have to like, you gotta woosah. You gotta like just like be nice to yourself and like do what feels right, but don't do too much, and like be creative, but also like sometimes don't be. Sometimes there's, I think there's a definite thing of a creative overload, and I think sometimes creativity can be inhibited by like putting too much pressure on being creative. So that's what I have to say about that.
Okay, so going more on our list, what's a dream role that you have?
Oh my God, that question made me go like that, because I don't even know. I really tried to think long and hard about it. A dream role. I mean, Elphaba has always been a dream role of mine, if I'm honest. But the more I get acquainted with, like, I think it's like having friends who have been in Wicked and who have been Elphabas. I'm like, wow, that sounds miserable in a lot of ways. But it's like I'd love to like do the part like once. But yeah, and I mean, I've always wanted to play Sarah in Ragtime. Oh, R.I.P. Terrence McNally. So sad. And I think my biggest thing is, for me, most of what I've done since being out of school, and like honestly, like didn't do much in school or in high school. So like in terms of like roles, like I said, like I was an ensemble girl through and through, until, yeah, like I played Maureen in Rent in high school, and that's like one of my favorite things I've ever done still. And I'd say most of the shows that I've already done, it's like I'd like to do again now. And so like that's definitely one. And DeAnne and Hair I've done a couple times, but like when I was like barely college age, and I would like to do it again now. And originating. But yeah, other than those things, for the most part, I've only done new things, and I'd like to originate like a principal track on Broadway is like, in terms of like an actual goal that I have. That's it.
Yeah, Eleanor.
What about being Elphaba sucks? I'm curious.
Oh, I mean, she's a killer. she takes people out. Like, I mean, it's hard. I think I definitely know. It's like one of the girls in my cast now, like she was an Elphaba standby for 3 years. So it's like, it's possible, but it just seems like it's like your entire, outside of playing that part, your entire life is dedicated to being able to play that part, which is to an extent, I think that's like doing any show really in like on a Broadway level, like an 8-show week schedule is mostly like that. Like being on tour with Beautiful was like, we are 90%, and like that show's not even that hard, but it was like, okay, we're like most of the time trying to figure out how to be able to still do the show. And like Jagged Little Pill, like she's rough. And yeah, it's like more of the time than not, you're just like, okay, well, great, not at work right now, but I'm at PT, or I'm at acupuncture, or I'm going to the gym, or I'm sleeping, or I'm in a voice lesson, or I'm like steaming, or on vocal rest. Like it's always that. But yeah, so I think Elphaba is just like hard, which sometimes I have a tendency of being like, oh, it's hard and it's too scary, I can't do it, even though like I think I probably actually could. But yeah, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, Hannah.
I don't know exactly how to formulate this into a question, but I'd love to talk more about originating work. Were you part of the original cast of Jagged Little Pill, and like what the process of workshopping looks like if you've done things like that?
So Jagged is one of the few things that I haven't been a part of the original process for, which is like, it was weird to me. Oh my God, guys, I just figured out how to like see all of you at once. Wow. She's old. So yeah, it's like, it's a struggle. Literally, Jagged and Beautiful are the only things, I think, if I think hard. Outside of one show I did regionally that was like a show that no one ever has ever done. So it was like, it felt original basically. And it's also a show that you kind of have to cater to the group of people that are doing it anyway. So that, yeah, it felt original. But
What show was that?
Striking 12.
Huh.
Really odd. No, not odd. It's not even odd. It's a great show. It's one of my favorite shows I've ever done. But it's just like no one does it. No one does it. And a director I know she happens to like be a cult follower of it, and like got it to happen at a theater and was like, I want you in it. And I was free. And I was like, okay, cool, let's do it. But it honestly was like one of the best experiences of my life. But yeah, otherwise it's like, it's hard. I think it's hard for me because I've done more of the opposite. So like with like the 2 shows I did on ships that were like new, or the show I did off Broadway I was original cast on. And so like that was, it's just very different when you're creating something that doesn't really exist, versus like being like, okay, and this is, but Jagged is a little different because it is still so new. So I had a lot more flexibility than someone who ends up doing Jagged a year from now will have, because I was the first replacement in the cast period. And like, it was just still like, they were just like, wait, how do we even have a replacement already? We just opened a month ago, and like that kind of thing. So I definitely did get a little more flexibility, but just because of a unique situation. But normally it's like with Beautiful whereas like I walked in and it was like, okay, so like, here's the book that basically says like everywhere you need to go and walk on what word and this, that, and the other, and this is how you do this, and like that's it, and you're just following this little map to be like, okay, I'm just replicating something in a sense, whereas like I'm used to being like, oh, but I want to do this and that working. So it's like, it's just definitely, it's 2 different it's very much two different, I don't know, pieces of your brain and two different aspects of expelling energy in a learning process and performance. It's, yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about the audition process for Jagged Little Pill? Like, how'd you get that gig?
Yeah, I mean, also like ways that nothing ever happens ever. Like, I feel like I have a lot of stories that are like, this is what won't happen to you, but it happened to me because it's just so bizarre. But I mean, no, in a sense, actually, this is a little more like it could happen. But so Jagged initially, so it's like they just opened in December, right? And they had an ensemble member who needed to take a leave of absence, like a medical leave of absence. So this was January, first week of January. And they were like, okay, they were going to have a temporary replacement come in for that track. And so during that time before that, basically, they were having the swing. So like there's a swing who covers that track and also covers Frankie. So they act as more of like a Frankie standby, but then they also cover this other ensemble track who also covers Frankie, one of the leads. So they were like, we need this immediate replacement temporarily. They had the audition came in on Tuesday afternoon, evening, whatever. The audition was going to be Thursday. It was like, okay, Thursday, go in, Thursday morning, a bunch of people are there to sing. We sing. They ask some people to stay to dance that afternoon. Okay, I had to run somewhere to another audition, actually. And I came back, danced, and then Thursday after that, Thursday evening or whatever, it was like, hey, we're doing finals are tomorrow morning. We want you to come. And so then there were 5 of us at the finals, and we danced first. We went over the dance, which was good for myself. And yeah, like DeAnne Paulus was there, and we danced, and then we all came in one by one and like did some singing. It was weird. Yeah, we sang for DeAnne and like the other people who were there. And then it was me and another girl who they had come in and do like a little, some scene work. And then, and then I found out later, like that late afternoon, early evening. And then like they had me see the show the next day. I had to do some like other little thing with the associate MD the next day. And I started rehearsal like officially on Tuesday. Kind of crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah, and then like even crazier after that is like the day that they like hired me, the swing who was like covering for that ensemble track until I was going to be ready, put in her notice. So that's how I ended up permanently with Jagged, because then they were like it was like so weird where it was like I knew certain information from other sources, and then like they were like kind of telling me things, and then they were like, I think by like the next week they're like, so would DeAnne be interested in like staying, because we might have a position for her to stay. And it was like I already knew all of this, like I knew the girl was leaving. I was just like but yeah, so it was like super crazy where like my debut was supposed to happen in the ensemble track at one point, but then in order to like keep me as the swing, they wanted to make sure I could really do the lead part. So they were like, oh, instead of doing that track first, we're gonna have her debut as the lead for these 2 days that she's out coming up. So like we're gonna scratch her learning that part, and she's gonna learn this part, and it was just like it was crazy. It was craziness, but all good fun. Here we are.
I think we have time for like 1 or 2 more questions. Does anyone here have questions that they want to shout out? I have more on my list, but from other people, but you have them. Okay, great. So who are 3 people that you want to work with at some point? Either actors or directors or whatever.
Well, when you sent me this last night, I immediately thought of like, I don't know, like directors, writers, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And I will say like Diane Paulus and Tom Kitt were 2 major people that I've like been like, one day. But like now I work with them. Weird. So that's cool. But so I had to think of some additional ones, and Jason Michael Webb is an MD that I really want to work with. I mean, I'd love to be directed by Joe Mantello. And I wrote down Janine Tesori. I would like to, I mean, yeah. would love to sing her music for her at some point. But yeah, I think there's so many.
And then I guess last, what's your go-to audition song right now?
Oh my God, this also stressed me out. So it's like, do I have a go-to audition song? Kind of, but not really. One that I've sung a bit more recently. It's like, the thing is,
Oh, she's frozen.
Songs, but Ain't No Sunshine is a song that, oh wait, can you guys hear me? It's telling me my internet is unstable. Wow.
You froze for a second there, but you're back now.
Okay, cool. I was like, unstable. That's not nice. Yeah, a song I've sung a few times in having to sing my own song recently was Ain't No Sunshine. Most of my songs, so I literally right before I got on, I was like looking at my book and I was like, what do I sing? And then I was like, oh man, all my songs for the most part are pop songs. Which is like such a weird thing because pop music's fine, whatever. But I also like musical theater. It's just like everyone always makes me like sing some like pop rock stuff. So that's mostly what I have going on now.
Fun. All right. Well, I think we're just about done, but thank you so much for talking to us. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh my gosh, wait, how did you do that little clap on the Hannah?
There's a little reaction.
There's a little reaction thing.
Oh, wow.
High tech.
So crazy. I can't believe life is happening like this, but it's amazing. Oh, my dog's back. He must know it's over. But thank you guys for having me.
Yes, thank you so much. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you all. Feel